Welcome to News Mongolia, where we bring you the latest stories and updates from across the nation and beyond. I am Batsirin Namshar. On News Mongolia today, presidents of Mongolia and Turkmenistan hold official talks. The Speaker of Parliament met with representatives from the child protection organizations and the general public. Over 45,000 people have come into close contact with measles patients. For the news, stay tuned. At the invitation of President of Mongolia, Ukhnagin Khurelsukh, President of Turkmenistan, Serdar Berdimuhamedov, is paying his first state visit to Mongolia. The two leaders held official talks on June 2nd, marking 30 years of diplomatic ties and agreeing to deepen cooperation across trade, education, transport, and environmental efforts. At the invitation of President of Mongolia, Ukhnagin Khurelsukh, President of Turkmenistan, Serdar Berdimuhamedov, is paying a state visit to Mongolia on June 1st to 2nd, 2025. On June 2nd, the two heads of state held official talks reviewing the achievements of 30 years of bilateral relations between Mongolia and Turkmenistan and discussing prospects and areas for developing cooperation between the two countries and enriching it with economic content. President Khurelsukh reaffirmed Mongolia's commitment to strengthening friendly relations with Central Asian countries, including Turkmenistan, and expanding cooperation in all areas. The Mongolian head of state expressed confidence that the reciprocal state visits by the presidents of the two countries within 1 year will strengthen the friendship and peace between the peoples of Mongolia and the Turkmenistan. President Serdar Berdimuhamedov expressed delight in paying a state visit to Mongolia for the first time and emphasized that the cooperation between the two countries has intensified in many areas since the state visit of President of Mongolia, Ukhnagin Khurelsukh, to Turkmenistan in 2024. The head of state of Turkmenistan expressed satisfaction that the agreements reached during the official talks in Ashgabat last year are becoming tangible actions. The two presidents agreed to strengthen the legal foundation of bilateral relations and actively cooperate in trade, economy, light industry, science, education, culture, and health, and commended the signing of intergovernmental and interagency agreements. The two sides highlighted that the establishment of the Mongolia-Turkmenistan Intergovernmental Commission for Bilateral Cooperation would serve as a mechanism to support mutually beneficial economic cooperation. The two heads of state underlined that the establishment of a joint committee on road transport to expand cooperation in the transport sector and create a new logistics route, as well as the joint committee on agriculture and the joint committee on veterinary medicine and animal husbandry, would be vital in boosting fruitful cooperation. The two sides also agreed to implement joint projects and programs in the light industry sector to diversify export-import commodities and increase trade turnover. President Khurelsukh and President Serdar Berdimuhamedov agreed to support collaboration between the universities and higher education institutions of the two countries, mutually provide scholarships for tertiary education students, prepare the workforce, and jointly organize cultural events. The two sides reaffirmed commitment to mutually support the initiatives and proposals put forward by each side on the international and regional fora and actively collaborate within international organizations on protecting the environment, forests, and water resources, as well as combating climate change and desertification. President of Mongolia, Ukhnagin Khurelsukh, expressed gratitude to President of Turkmenistan, Serdar Berdimuhamedov, for joining the multilateral agreement for the establishment of an international think tank for landlocked developing countries initiated by Mongolia. The Speaker of the State Great World met with key child protection stakeholders, including representatives from the United Nations Children's Fund, World Vision Mongolia, and the Unurbu Center to address issues such as online safety, legal gaps in foster care, and parental accountability. Participants emphasized the need for stronger legislation and collaborative efforts to safeguard children's rights and cultural identity in the digital age.
The meeting's participants included representatives from the United Nations, World Vision International Mongolia, the UNRWA Center, and other governmental and private organizations working in child protection. The UNICEF representative in Mongolia expressed appreciation for the speaker's attention to children's issues at the highest level of the legislature. Representatives from the UNRWA Center emphasized the need to address the numerous legal loopholes related to foster care services. Of course, a number of initiatives aimed at child development are being implemented. However, there is an urgent need to carry out these efforts at a much higher quality, aligned with the realities on the ground. Especially in the online space, children are increasingly vulnerable to discrimination and violence, and in some cases, it can even lead to exposure to more serious criminal behavior. That's why there is an urgent need for all of us to work together. Protecting children online is not only about preventing violence, abuse, or discrimination. The most important thing is that we risk losing our heritage, culture, and language in the digital space. Every Mongolian child must be able to fully master and speak the Mongolian language fluently and proudly. Another important issue raised during the meeting was the need to strengthen accountability mechanisms for individuals who, despite being capable of working, shirk their parental responsibilities and leave their children in the care of the state. The participants also underscored the importance of protecting children from online crimes and integrating such measures into national legislation.
Over 4,200 measles cases have been confirmed in Mongolia in the past 3 months, with health officials warning of rising infections among school children and unvaccinated infants. Authorities urge the public to get vaccinated and take preventive measures to curb the outbreak.
More than 4,200 measles cases have been confirmed over the last 3 months. Over half of these patients have recovered, but there have been 2 deaths. The National Center for Communicable Diseases has reported that 453 people have sought care at the facility and 120 were diagnosed with measles. Health officials have noted that many people are bypassing their local district hospitals and going directly to the NCCD, which increases the risk of exposing their children to infection. They emphasize that this behavior heightens the chance of spreading the disease. High risk refers to those who have not been vaccinated. Our greatest concern is infants aged 0 to 8 months. These children are typically at home. That's why parents, siblings, and especially school-age children who interact with them must get vaccinated to protect them. The majority of measles cases are being reported among school-age children, with outbreaks primarily centered in general education schools. Officials are urging the public to take preventive measures, such as wearing face masks at public gatherings to reduce the spread of infection.
The children being treated at home are just like us. Remember, during COVID, when we went into lockdown and didn't go out at all, it's no different now. Please don't participate in the June 1st events. These children are at the stage where they can spread the infection to others. So, if your child is being treated at home, make sure they are under the supervision of your family doctor and please wash their dishes properly.
Officials warn that if a child who has not received the measles vaccination becomes infected, their condition can worsen rapidly, swiftly becoming potentially life-threatening.
You're watching News Mongolia. Now let's take a look at the currency exchange rates provided by Mongol Bank. Now let's take a look at international news from our partner agencies. At the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth reaffirmed that the Indo-Pacific remains a strategic priority for Washington. He assured allies that the United States will continue to strengthen its military presence in the region to counter growing threats from China, particularly Beijing's increasing pressure on Taiwan.
Australian Defence Minister Richard Marles welcomed the U.S. commitment but emphasized that regional stability cannot rely solely on American power. Marles also criticized past U.S. trade policies, saying high tariffs under the Trump administration had caused disruption and instability.
The commitment underscored by U.S. Secretary of Defence Hegseth today that the Indo-Pacific is the United States' strategic priority is deeply welcome. The reality is that there is no effective balance of power in this region absent the United States. But we cannot leave it to the United States alone. Other countries must contribute to this balance as well, and that includes Australia. Through the largest peacetime increase in defence spending since the end of the Second World War, Australia is investing in a generational transformation of the ADF to ensure we are not only in a position to deter force projection against us, but also, and perhaps even more importantly, to contribute to an effective regional balance where no state concludes that force is a viable way to achieve strategic goals.
Hegseth highlighted China's military drills near Taiwan, which U.S. officials view as preparation for a potential blockade. He noted that China aims to have the capability to take Taiwan by force by 2027, an ambition regarded by many analysts as aspirational rather than fixed. Still, the U.S. maintains its pledge to defend the self-governing island.
Dividing the Indo-Pacific into geostrategic and geoeconomic blocks would not only make us all poorer, it would make us more vulnerable to conflict. If opportunities are removed to become more prosperous through trade and investment between states, key incentives are also removed to keep the peace. Interdependence is no panacea, but nor is securitisation, which imposes only binary options and counterintuitively undermines deterrence. Liberal trade matters. Trade has been the lifeblood of the Asian region, and the shock and disruption to trade from high tariffs has been costly and destabilising.
While previous U.S. administrations have promised a pivot to the Pacific, conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East have repeatedly diverted military focus. Indo-Pacific nations remain cautious, relying on the U.S. for security while depending on China economically. Hegseth warned that trying to balance both powers may prove risky, especially as China asserts broader territorial and resource claims in the region.
Well, that's all for today. Thank you for staying with us. We'll see you tomorrow with more news and updates. Goodbye.